Hello, Karl Mollison. How you doing?
Carl, yes.
Yes,
Hi.
great. Sorry, Mr. Call, a couple minutes late. I just got out of the shower.
You
But
see me? I don't see you.
oh, that's because this is audio only. This is an
Oh,
audio only program, and if you, I don't know, if you want to have your camera on for any reason, well, that's up to you. But I would recommend probably turning it off because it probably would allow for the transmission to go through better,
sure.
as it is audio only. So, with that being said, I heard about you from, well, I watched both of those interviews that you did with Elena Kapolnik back in like late April, early May of this year. I thought it was very intriguing, and you're certainly not a fraud in regards to channeling higher entities. There's definitely, based on your body language and all that, you were definitely doing what you say you were doing, and your answers for with that you gave Elena for many of the questions she asked were, well, intriguing to say the least, and of course, it led me to believe all the more. Not that I believed it at all, but Elena's definitely not a fraud. She's definitely got something to say in regards to her secret space program stuff, and I've interviewed her, and yeah, that was a great interview to remember. Um, so I guess I have both of your websites up, teamarchangel.com and mindbodyadvances.com up as well. I'll use them as a guide throughout this interview. But to start off, I think the best way to do this is to give you the chance to tell your life story. But in telling that life story, I just want to request that you try to keep it educational because this is Nature of Reality Radio. I try to expose the nature of reality for what it is and what it is not. And if I have people like you who can act as a great primary source to expose that nature of reality based on what they've experienced and seen, then by all means, I want to give them the chance to do that at the beginning of my shows, which I usually do. So I'd like you to do that. Take as long as you need. You got the floor. Keep it fun and educational and enlightening. What happened to you, what you experienced, and what you plan to do for the future. And by all means, I already gave you websites, but you can also give out your contact info as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity to hold forth a bit and share my story and share a bit of an outreach to folks to help encourage them to take advantage of opportunities available. I do a lot of healing work, and so I'm big on healing. I believe you should do healing early and often. That's kind of my motto. And I know that it's important because we're all coming from behind, but I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. So basically, who I am and where I came from was a very mainstream life in most respects. I uh, was enamored of science as a child, and I was fascinated by health issues, medicine, and so on. And I eventually found myself working in the pharmaceutical industry as a researcher, doing pharmacology research to devise new medical therapies, probing causes of disease, the mechanism, and devising new therapeutic targets and ways to evaluate drug agents on those targets. And this was intended to help medicine. This wasn't, all about making money. I wasn't in the business end, so don't hold that against me. There are some honest folk, the bench scientists who are really trying to push back the frontiers. It's not the best approach, and I've come to learn that along the way. But again, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. And along the way, I felt that science really had a lot of the answers. And that's really a false assumption. Science is only what you can do with it. It's based on observation, making conclusions. It's only as good as we are, as smart as we are. And we typically limp along. And when we think there's great strides, it's only in reference to how meager we've been in the past. And there's so much more that we don't know. And it was Sir Isaac Newton who said, what we know is a drop and what we don't know is an ocean. And that really hasn't changed. So we're still kind of limping along in the world and trying to figure out how to make things better. And along the way, I started having a spiritual awakening. And I retired from that career as a scientist, and it enabled me to look more broadly about what is really going on and what is really the source of problems in people, because I was always frustrated. I was constrained largely by what you could put in a pill and what you could justify using a pill for. and the mechanism that justified that choice. And that's a very limited view of physical reality. And of course, when you get into illness, you're talking about a whole broader array of influences, because you have the mental and you have the emotional and you have the spiritual aspects of a person. And it turns out those are hugely important, and they really dwarf the physical manifestation end of things. So in my spiritual awakening, I was always fascinated with certain phenomena. And so I decided I could indulge myself now, and I can go and learn about things like the paranormal. I was always fascinated by ESP. I wasn't much of a believer in an afterlife and the creator, because I drifted away from it. And there's other reasons as well. But I thought science really held the way forward, and that would ultimately give us all the information we needed. It was very naive and misguided, and most people are kind of leaning more and more in that direction. There's this secular movement that's been going on. But as I started looking at paranormal phenomena, I also started learning more about the mind, and in particular the subconscious. I was always fascinated by it and the phenomenon of hypnosis. And I tried it once many, many years ago and was amazed at the experience I had, but I just sort of filed it away because I couldn't have used it in a practical sense in my life at that point. But I came back to that and started looking at it, and I started hanging out with some hypnotists. And of course, I learned fairly quickly they were actually helping people with emotional problems in ways that therapists were not able to do, because by and large, they don't go to the subconscious with tools to address it directly. The major thrust right now is cognitive behavioral therapy to help give people supporting systems and perspectives so that they can find strategies to help them cope with their life and find better ways to navigate and so on. But it's not getting down into the deep inner workings of the mind. And the hypnotists were doing that. And I was fascinated. And so I decided to become a hypnotist because one can do this. There's not a huge barrier to entry. And as an intelligent person and with a good heart and motivation to serve and to help, I fit in, and I learned an enormous amount. And along the way, I learned additional tools to do trauma resolution work. And it involves interfacing with the subconscious again. And it's a kind of energy psychology healing, but it's highly effective. And it can fix almost any kind of problem that's based on a negative experience, which includes most things. That's what they are. They're a trauma experience and the stored negativity from the trauma. And if you go in and connect to it and help the person to do that themselves, they can resolve it. You can guide them through a step-by-step process, and it works beautifully. It's great for some heavy-duty things, even serious PTSD, post-traumatic stress. But it's something that the mainstream still is only slowly beginning to become aware of. So, and of course, I also ran into phenomena of a more spiritual nature, the possibility of looking at people's past lifetimes and eliciting memory of those experiences directly within a person just through hypnotic suggestion. And I'm not suggesting that this is going to find any particular experience. It's only inviting them to go back to the past and see what might be there. And of course, this is all dismissed by the mainstream. Well, you're just kind of talking them into something, and everybody thinks they're Cleopatra, blah, blah, blah. Those are common misconceptions. And what I was told very early and didn't believe it, I'm talking decades ago, most people can go back and connect to a past life if they're hypnotizable. Almost everyone. It'll likely be a mundane life, and often something that didn't go so well. And there's a reason people connect to those things, because they're still rumbling. So again, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, and this won't take too much longer to get to the point that I really want to get to in this discourse. And as I learned more about these kind of phenomena, I saw that there's tremendous opportunity for healing that's largely neglected by society. So I went into business. I started a practice. That's my mindbodyadvances.com website. It's the most, that's the more mainstream hat that I wear, if you will. I have the two. One is more far out, more spiritual in its orientation. But that mainstream site allows me to use techniques that are defensible with an understanding of psychology, and they fit right in with the mainstream view by and large. And a lot of people now are using guided imagery in various ways to help people to feel better and encourage them and so on. And that's basically what it is. It's a guided imagery process to resolve trauma. And it can be anything, grief, it can be something that they regret that happened, a failure, a struggle in school that lasted a long time, or a career collapse, a relationship problem, difficulty, tension, being rejected by someone, on and on and on. All those things traumatize a person, including encounters with the medical system. That can cause trauma to people big time when they have a serious illness. So that I found very, very productive. And along the way, I met a hypnotist who had been working with his wife for many years doing remote spirit releasement. And I heard him talk about this several times. And I kept bugging him to meet with him for coffee because I wanted to pick his brain. I wanted to learn more what this was and get convinced one way or another. Is there something to this or not? And he finally did a training and trained a small group of us in this very same process. So we took turns tuning into someone's spirit attachments intuitively, with a partner hypnotizing us and then giving us the instructions to connect to that spirit, the darkest spirit in the person, and have it speak through us. This was a tremendous eye-opening experience for me because I'm always very skeptical of new things. I want evidence. I want proof. I still think like a scientist. I like validation. That's important. I don't have time to engage in fantasy, wishful thinking. I want things that work, and I want to, if at all possible, to understand why it works, what it's doing, and how it's doing it. And that's just who I am. I'm very, very curious. And I was amazed to see that I could have spirits speaking through me. And it seemed very, very real. I was certain it wasn't me. I was very familiar with trance states, what the subconscious is like when you talk to it and how it interacts with someone asking things. This was something different. This was another consciousness coming through me. And I also found I could scan people and see whether they had spirits in them or not, and then connect to those spirits. That's a paranormal phenomenon in itself. It's intuitive capability, clairvoyance, if you want to put another common term to it. And I found this process had amazing benefits on the spot. If you have some other consciousness inside of your energy and it's malevolent, a lot of things can happen as a consequence. So this was mind-blowing. It was just an amazing experience. And in fact, it was a broader learning than I appreciated at the time. Towards the end of this training, it was not too long after the Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in Arizona by a shooter. I think he killed 14 people or something on a kind of shooting spree. And he was on the cover of Time magazine. He was looking demonic. They printed him in red, and it was very, very clear there. This wasn't your normal neighborly person. And so we had some time at the end of this weekend of the second training session, and I raised my hand and asked, could we work on this Jared Loeffner guy? He's sitting in jail, but maybe we could do a spirit removal and it might help him in some way. And so they volunteered me to be the facilitator, to channel whatever was in him. So I went up front, the guy hypnotized me, the instructor, and I connected to the strongest dark spirit being in him, and it spoke through me. And we spent probably 45 minutes with this hypnotist asking various questions of this dark spirit, and kind of got the story of what it was like. And it was really fascinating. I really got a sense of what these beings think about, who they are, what they value and what they don't. They are dark. They've turned away from the light a long time ago. They're afraid of the light. They're terrified of the light because they've been told it will destroy them. This is propaganda, of course. And I also got an insight into how they work. When this spirit was asked, why did you shoot this congresswoman? He said they wanted her killed. And that wasn't followed up on at the time, but it stuck with me. And I know now the reason was this was orchestrated. This was a hit. This was arranged to have it done. Someone wanted her taken out. And there was, I think, a judge as well. But this is something that happens routinely. These are an instrument of a kind of a dark hidden hand that influences humanity across the board. These spirits have been doing this for thousands of years now, and there's another element that's further corralling them and giving them marching orders. And that was what was intimated in that exchange. But this is the kind of being that we're talking about. And so, for example, he was very proud of the fact that long time ago, he happened to be inside a general, an army general, during a battle on horseback. And at a key moment, he was able to reach out with his energy and distract that general's horse. And it reared up, and he didn't see someone about to strike a blow towards him. And he was struck and he was killed. And that spirit was just delighted because it not only caused the general to be killed, but they lost the battle, which was the whole point of it. And again, there's a bigger story behind that episode as well. He was being used as a tool, as a political tool, very much like an assassin. But in any event, that was the big eye-opening I had. So I had to ponder now what to do with this skill. And so I started taking a little time each week with a colleague, and we would pair up and do this together. And I would be the intuitive, and she would be the questioner, and so on. And we did a number of things, a number of explorations, just to kind of see what we could do, what we couldn't. And it led to learning more and more and more about it. The fact that this phenomenon affects animals, and it affects people across the board from all walks of life, including children, and especially children. They're targeted early and often because they're not taken yet. 90% of people have these dark spirits. So I know this is creepy, and I apologize in advance. I deal with problems. I don't try to think of the beautiful things that are out there that we want to have. I face the problems head on. That's who I am and what I do. And so we can talk about that a little bit as well, because there's some important lessons in that I'd like to pass on for people, especially those people who are currently thinking, well, you shouldn't focus on the negative. that it'll just attract more and you need to focus only on positive things. And what I would say is to really ask, is that logical? I mean, don't you need to get a diagnosis before you apply a treatment? You know, you don't take your car to a mechanic and ask them to manifest a repair on that car that you want it to run smoothly. And so they focus on that car running smoothly, and somehow that car starts to run smoothly because they manifest that. No, they do a series of diagnostic checks to look at the different mechanical parts, see if something's broken. Well, I can tell you authoritatively, because I talk to the light, I talk to light beings through channeling and creator as well. And I've been taught by them how the divine realm heals. And they don't picture you as whole and suddenly you're whole. They go in and see what's wrong. And then they look to see what caused it. They don't just focus on you having happiness and abundance, and then they make it so because you will match their view of it. They go in and fix what's damaged, what isn't working, what has gotten out of alignment, or what has been corrupted in some way. If you think about this, this is only logical. And so that's what I was wanting to do with these spiritual tools, to learn more about what goes wrong for people and what can I do about it? How do we fix more? And I expanded this to include more kinds of phenomena, and I found that I could. So I built this on the work of others. William Baldwin, a dentist who wrote a big manual on remote spirit releasement, he coined that term. And he was looking for certain other phenomena too that relate to karmic issues, meaning things you cause to happen. Karma is cause and effect, basically. That the good things and the bad things both will circle back around to you. So when you harm someone, eventually you'll taste that yourself. You'll have some way that you will be required to repay a karmic debt to that person or to someone else. Or you might need to do some acts of service. Otherwise, you'll have an imbalance. You might have an illness because of it. This is what karma does. It finds a way to bring back to your attention, you put the universe out of balance. And you have to fix it in some way, directly or indirectly. So I added more and more things to my list of phenomena that I would scan for, and then I would go in and have them removed. I work with the archangels and ask them to do some healing and so on. And eventually I refined it further after I did some training in DNA ThetaHealing, where you work directly with creator and make requests for healing and witness what happens. I found I could work directly with creator to do all of the healing and have creator sort out who does what and whether there's subsidiary beings brought in as adjuncts or whatever. I leave that to creator. So it allowed me to do this as a single person process. So now this is what I do. I call it the Lightworker Healing Protocol, and it has a list of phenomena, and I go through from A to Z. I go in intuitively, see what's needed, and then request that creator come in and adjust it, remove it, or heal it in some way or another, depending on what it is. And I teach this to others as well. And it's a very straightforward process. It's basically a high-level informed prayer request that you make, because you're able to test for things and check for things most people don't even know exist. So all those people out there praying, they don't know what to pray for really, because they don't know what's wrong. If you know what's wrong, you'll get a little more effective help brought to bear. people are a little naive. They think all they need to do is reach out to God and God will take care of everything. Well, does that happen in practice? I would argue the evidence is more against than for that, because the world is a mess despite the majority of people being religious and, presumably praying on a regular basis. And of course, we don't know what everybody prays for, but there are setbacks that happen. There are blocks to getting assistance from the divine. There are a number of them. And it relates to free will and free agency. We're responsible for our lives. And that's the karmic setup here. So the paradigm is we're in charge. We have to make things happen. And that includes bringing in the divine realm. If we want them to help, we have to ask. And we often have to ask specifically for something. There are things that are allowable, some that are not, some that are easy, some that are hard, some that are quick, some that take a long, long, long time. And so there are ins and outs, there are nuances. The more you know, the better you will be at enlisting divine help. The stronger your belief, the more the divine realm can do. If you believe 90% that God is real, God can't help you. You have to have 100% belief quotient. This is why religions figured out, well, sometimes it's good to do group prayer. And what that does is it gets over that hurdle, in many cases at least. You get enough people with some belief, you get over 100%, and that's all you need. 100% coming from somewhere. So hiring someone like myself to help you with a problem adds my belief quotient to yours. So that's an advantage right off from the beginning. And then the ability to understand what's needed makes a big, big difference also. Because if you ask a very vague general request, the divine realm is limited because their basic rule is don't interfere unless you're asked. Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to fix this? Are they going to fix that? Or are they going to tweak this? Are they going to tweak that? None of which you've asked for directly. You just want to be happy. You want to have, some financial improvement, or you want to get over a health problem that's a little more specific. Or you're praying for someone else, a loved one, for their struggle. But if you don't really know why they're struggling, what it is that's needed, again, it's a very vague thing. What should God do? Maybe there's huge infestation with dark spirits in your loved one, and that's what's making them treat their child harshly. You think they're just discouraged about their life, and maybe they're being mean because they are so wrapped up in their problems and their troubles. Well, yeah, that could be a part of it, but they may be pushed over the edge by dark spirit attachments. So there could, in addition, be huge karmic mechanisms in play. They may have been in a past life together, that child and their grandchild, and maybe that dad was abusive in a past life, maybe more than once, and they're back together to try to fix it, but the same pattern is recurring. So when I do my healing, I look for karmic issues, karmic entanglements, as well as energetic misadjustments, energies that don't belong, intrusive energies, psychic attacks coming from people. We all ding one another with our psychic energy. Thoughts are an energy that goes out in the universe, and it persists. It's a creation. We are creative beings. So that's why there's truth behind not thinking negative things, because that can have consequences. And then there are high-level psychic attacks, people who do cursing and so on. Those phenomena are real. If someone knows what they're doing, they can do a lot of damage. And you can do severe harm to someone by setting the right intention. And there are people who do this for a living. And this is pretty common. I see a very high percentage of people who have curses going on. And they're ancestral curses, because it used to be even more widespread in past generations and other cultures down through the ages. This was something from antiquity that's been going on all these years. Very sophisticated things, very diabolical, nasty things. And they have an effect. They have an impact on people. So now I've sort of grown more and more into a very odd character, I guess, compared to most people, because I spend a huge amount of my time working on these kinds of issues and dilemmas for folks. And there's no end of trouble out there with so many people having spirit attachments, everyone having negative karma that's rumbling. You don't have all of it activated at one time, but typically there is some things going on, maybe several at once, that are being stirred up, maybe because you're back in life with the same family group and you went through tough times in the past. Maybe you lived through famine times and people starved, and now there's a lot of tension because maybe there's some family members who can't find work, and that stress is understandable, but it might be added to by past karma being stirred up and piling on. So these burdens can be alleviated through healing, and it's quite important to do. It turns out, and I've learned a lot about these phenomena and their importance in things. So let me just give you a quick tour of some of the things that can happen. And so, none of this is pretty, but again, think about the times when we were totally ignorant of things like germs. Is it better to not know? And people would just suddenly develop lesions and they die. No one knew why. Whole towns might be wiped out. They would get ill and then they would perish. I think it's better to know. Yeah, there are germs. There's bacteria, there's viruses, and they're a little different. And these kind of diseases come more from the bacteria, these more from the viruses. And some of these things can be treated chemically, some not right now, but there's prevention that can be done. And there are ways to deal with symptoms more effectively and so on. So this is kind of the same thing. We're really largely ignorant of these sort of phenomena. So spirits mostly cause emotional things. They can cause some physical things. They're hugely important in mental illness. They cause the most severe mental illnesses, the psychoses. That's entirely induced by spirit manipulation of the mind. And it can leave lasting symptoms even when spirits are removed if it goes on long enough. Many people who think there's something talking to them are correct. It's another consciousness. Not always. Sometimes it's induced for them to do it to themselves. That's a kind of a more detailed story. But character disorders, they corrupt the connection to your higher self. And they close down the ability to feel love and compassion. What does that do? It makes a person self-centered. So narcissism, it's a disconnection from the spiritual linkage to the soul level. Spirits contribute to that disconnection. And so there's also issues from extraterrestrials having done the same thing to us. So we have multiple outside influences trying to undermine humanity here. And this is a growing problem. It's not getting better quick enough right now. And I'm getting some sense of urgency from the divine realm about this. We have been on an upward path, but now there's some backlash coming because the other side is noticing and they're trying to push back against this ongoing enlightenment that we have, the shift in consciousness, the move towards ascension. So they're ramping up the negativity and trying to make things worse for people. So this happens in many ways on many levels. Basically, spirits are influencing the emotions, behavior, inner negativity. They can produce some physical symptoms. They go after children. They go after babies. I'm told that 50% of the time that babies cry for no reason, they're being tormented by spirits. I'm sorry. Isn't it better to know? Because you can make a prayer request to have those spirits moved out. It's good to know this. Colicky babies, it's often spirit attacks going on with them. There's about 5% of people, children included, who are taken out of their bodies at night and tormented by spirits. That's the reason for some sleeplessness, some fear of going to bed at night in children, and continues on through adulthood. People are afraid to shut their eyes because they know subconsciously what might be coming. They might not have conscious awareness of it. They might have memory of horrible, horrible nightmares, and it could be a real experience they've had. So there's all kinds of creepy stuff like that that's possible. Most physical illness is caused by karma, negative karma, from past lives more than the current life. And boy, was that an eye-opener for me. I was amazed by that. I couldn't believe it when I learned this fact, but I would see it in my clients. When I worked on people and looked at their past life contracts, which are kind of a major trauma that's rumbling, I would see connections between a past life and something going on in the current life. And asking Creator to show me point of origination, which is a DNA ThetaHealing technique, I would often be shown something from that karmic past life contract experience that had some bearing on it. So, for example, going through a marriage where the husband is abusive, I might see there was more than one lifetime with that same spouse. And then I might be shown it's the current spouse. So this is karma in action. And it is fixable potentially. And getting divine healing for it is the shortcut. You can keep going through life after life with a group of people you have trouble with and do it the hard way, come in with the intention to work on it, fix it. But we're not taught about this still. So it's hard to do on your own and make up the right answers when you don't even know what the problem is that you're fighting. You just may know there's tension in your marriage, but you don't have any clue that there's been problems in past lives that are stirring up both of you and adding more difficulty. There are buttons being pushed internally. So this is a big aspect as well. And then the other third element is extraterrestrials. And it turns out they're hugely influential through all of society. They're doing huge mind control manipulation of people. So this makes me an even odder duck, and I'm sorry, but if I have an opportunity to spread that information, I will, because, again, it's important to know. It's better to know than not know. And the answer I'm told for it is really to ask the divine realm for assistance here. And it's simple. Ask the divine realm to come in, give us love, and give love to everyone around us. And that includes anybody who's doing anything against the light, against our progress, against a person personally. Very simple. Ask the divine to bring love in. Yes, we can use our own love, and we should. But guess who has the most? It really isn't us. It's Creator. Creator has the most light. And we have been increasingly seduced into thinking we can do everything ourselves. And focusing on love and light is all wonderful. Rainbows and butterflies and manifesting and focusing on the abundance. Focus on where you want to go. And all of those injunctions to avoid resistance. You don't have to work at it. Go with the flow. Well, that's fine up to a point. But I'm telling you, if you're bumping into extraterrestrials who want to control you, having love in your thoughts is not going to be effective. They are not love-based beings at this point. They have been so corrupted, they're dragged down to a level, they're very savage and cynical. They will not respond to loving gestures. This is a divine level problem. It truly is. And the solution is available, but we have to choose it. So we have more power than we think. So this is what I do. I do lots of one-on-one healing work. I do a lot of things by phone. I do guided imagery work for helping people with all sorts of issues. I do a lot of clearing, remote spirit removals, and karmic repair on people in family groups. And it's really, really beautiful work because everyone affects one another. And if you work on everyone in a family, there'll be multiple benefits. So I don't know if you're still there, but I'll give you an opportunity to chime in and
What, do you think I fell asleep? How could I possibly fall asleep? A guest like you is a rare gem who could keep talking about interesting stuff like this, and the host has absolutely no interest in interrupting because it's so enlightening and interesting. So, yeah, there's no way I'm going to fall asleep listening to this. So, yeah, of course I'm still here.
okay. Well, I understand that in most groups, most gatherings of a spiritual nature and where people want upliftment, I'm the odd man out, and I have been, all along. I go to a lot of expos where there are people doing psychic readings and so on, a lot of vendors selling crystals, and everyone wants encouragement, and I do understand that. We all need it. We all want it. But there is a time for looking at the serious problems that are plaguing us because they don't go away on their own. They really do not. They become a part of us. And if part of the mind embraces it, that is now who we are. And the deep subconscious won't let go of trauma. It's designed to hold on to the memory because it's a life lesson. It has survival value. Back in the day, you're out playing with your friend and you go a little beyond the edge of the village and, a lion jumps out of the bushes and eats your friend. Well, you learn something that day. Maybe not to drift out away from the village, but also maybe when you hear rustling in bushes, maybe you should start running and so on. So that memory serves a purpose. It has survival value. But do you want to go through your entire life being seized with fear every time it's a day when the dusk is coming on and you start being afraid? Because that was what that was like in that moment. The sun was fading and maybe the wind is rustling through the bushes and now your heart starts to pound and maybe you go into a full-blown panic attack. Well, that memory is outwearing its welcome, especially if you move to a country that doesn't have lions. It won't matter. The cues will be there. The memory will be there. It'll re-echo. It'll haunt you. So many things are like that, especially things that come from past lifetimes. They're out of date, but the mind doesn't know it. It needs help. And so there is a way to tame these things and to release them, and it's freeing. And then that is the way to free up your energy to make good things happen and not be so preoccupied with the negative, the things dragging you down. And mostly we're getting in our own way, but we have help with that too. And that's another aspect. And most people have no idea. I mean, most people are aware the mind's important, and even medicine has recognized since 2000 that adverse childhood events play out even decades later in serious health consequences, chronic illnesses of all kinds, including cancer and diabetes and liver disease, lung disease, as well as, psychiatric problems and so forth. And that's what we're talking about. It's the stress chronically from having trauma memories rumbling below the surface for the most part. And occasionally maybe the actual memory floats up, but it can beat up on the body without even being in conscious awareness. And they're seeing this in medicine. They don't have a good answer for it. The answer exists, but they don't know yet. So this is what's going to happen down the line. There'll be a merging of some of the things that are considered complementary or alternative now, and they will eventually become the mainstream approaches. And it turns out, because 94% of physical illness is caused by karma, this is going to be the answer for health. Not pills, not medication. That's a symptomatic treatment. It cannot cure karma. That's why you get symptomatic relief. So the way the divine realm heals is to heal your karma and or remove spirit and extraterrestrial manipulations and interference. So those three things, those three causes of negativity are really, really important. So when I do my healing protocol, sometimes I'll have amazing benefits. Sometimes the person will feel no difference whatsoever, in which case their problems just extend so deep, one session isn't sufficient. And many times there are so many things out of kilter that they may need multiple healing sessions. This isn't a shock. I mean, it's true no matter what you do with other types of therapeutic interventions. There are many things like this where it takes all you can do to stay abreast and not have the person go under. If you can keep them going, that's an achievement. So it's a question of how far behind you are, in part, because we have multiple lifetimes. So the average person's had about 400 past lives on average, some more than that. That's a lot of opportunities for mayhem to have happened and negative karma to have been accumulated, all of which has to be rebalanced. That's the way the world is, the way the universe is. And that becomes a huge liability. And that slows down the light workers. So when I teach healing to light workers, one of the things I do is look to see what inner beliefs they have about doing healing work. And it's amazing to see the things people are carrying without knowing it, without realizing it. So they'll have beliefs they test yes for, like, if I heal people, I'll be killed. Well, that isn't a capital offense these days. Where does that come from? That's a past life inheritance from trauma. And when I look at people's past life contracts, I'll see that oftentimes if they're doing healing work in particular or trying to benefit society in some way, they'll have past lives where they were tortured, burned at the stake or whatever. I mean, I don't want to get too graphic here, but this is what we're talking. Grisly treatment, torture and death. And healers especially, because they've always been seen as a threat to the established order. They were seen as a threat to the church when the church was a political tool, and they were seen as a threat to the people who truly hold power, who are corrupted by dark spirits, and they're working with the extraterrestrials to keep us under their thumb. So I know this sounds like tinfoil hat things, but there's plenty of evidence out there for the possibility of what I'm describing. You can start with the hundreds of thousands of people who've seen a UFO. Okay, so what does that mean? Scientific UFO nauts come down and they're interested in observing us, and we're kind of like a laboratory, maybe a sociological study, and so they come and observe, and then they whiz back because they obey the prime directive. And they wouldn't interfere for any reason, because that wouldn't be nice. It wouldn't be ethical. And the assumption is always, if there's an extraterrestrial out there, if they can come from another planet, they're obviously way, way more advanced than we are. And of course, they would be more evolved spiritually. and ethically. They would have already solved the problem of war and poverty, and they would not be wanting to do anything to harm another being on another world. It's inconceivable because, of course, all our inclination is that that would be so. We're always the bad guy. Well, that's programming that's been given to us. There is an alternative view. You see it in some of the science fiction movies. So I would tell you that from what I am told by the light, the Star Wars series is much more accurate a depiction of what you can expect from extraterrestrials. It's very parallel to reality. There is an evil empire, and there's more than one. We have 3 major extraterrestrial civilizations, all in our Earth plane, all here now, physically on the planet. And they're all working behind the scenes to undermine us in different ways and take advantage of us in different ways. And there are no good physical ETs. That's another misconception. It's programming designed to help them. They want to fool us. So there's disinformation campaigns of all kinds. Many of the channelers are being duped, and they're being co-opted by imposters who engage with them, and they're extraterrestrial psychics. They know our religious beliefs, our spiritual beliefs. They've studied us for thousands and thousands of years, and they can quote chapter and verse, and they will give back to the channeler what they want to hear. Encouragement, sweetness and light, ways to raise your vibration, ways to help others and use love and spread love and give love. But they'll never tell you to reach out to God. They'll never give you true answers, and they'll never talk about what is really going on in the world. And they'll discourage you from asking. Oh, don't focus on the past. That won't help you. Focus on the future. Manifest that glorious future. Well, the past holds many clues to what is wrong now, because it stems from what happened before. You know, the car doesn't work because it started sputtering. Maybe that went on for a long time. And if we went back and looked at those symptoms, we might understand now why the car doesn't turn on. But you need to do that sort of exploration. So when the divine realm works on a problem, they look at the whole experience base of the subject. And that includes the future as well as the present and the past, all of the past. And they look at all the influencers involved that impinged on that individual. Themselves as the most important negative influence, unfortunately. We beat up on ourselves. Our dark thoughts and our self-judgments are hugely important, and they have an impact. And then our family group. And this extends beyond the present. So it's not only what we've done to ourselves today in the last 30 minutes, but our entire life. And then all of our past lives. We were there too. We were influencing ourselves in past lives. Maybe we got discouraged in many lifetimes. And it's a pattern, and it's recurring again. And we're busily undermining ourselves yet again. That's a karmic pattern. And it might project into the future for a while. So that future actually loops back into the present. So we can get negative influences not only from our past, but the future. That's true for our family group. When you go back in past lives, you may be with some of the same family members, maybe all of them for a life or two. Then maybe a wider group becomes more representative. But all those influencers left their mark. So they look at all the families, past, present, and future. And then a wider circle of influencers. The soul collective, everyone you interact with. Neighbors, friends, kids at school, bullies, mean teachers, people in society, co-workers, bosses, maybe slave owners, depending on the era, because we're talking the entirety of the past, marauders, rulers who were harsh and caused no end of problems, on and on and on and on. All those individuals left a mark on us karmically, energetically. And it still matters because it's all on record and it's all impinging on us in a given moment in some way to some extent. And then beyond that, there are the archetypes, the soul collective of everyone has other influences. We're all contributing to collective unconscious. That has an energy. All the collective thoughts, all of the collective energies exist, and we touch base with that collective. It's sort of like taking the temperature. It's sort of like getting the weather report. Well, what's the collective culture thinking now? How are we doing? Uh-oh, there's trouble. And it turns out, 9/11 happened that morning, and we're already feeling something is up. That's the collective unconscious. And there's a collective unconscious of all the negative extraterrestrials. That's another archetype. Then there are cultural beliefs. And then there are soul ancestral beliefs. So there's many, many sources of influence that add to who we are and create a sum total of an energetic signature that's more positive or less positive, as the case may be. And as I mentioned, we're all kind of coming from behind. If you look back in history, we didn't come from glorious eras of thousands of years. We've been struggling as far back as recorded history shows. You want to go back to the so-called mythical times of Atlantis, which were myth, they were real. Atlantis was destroyed, and it almost destroyed the entirety of humanity. So there's karma still from those times, not all of which has been healed. So there's a lot going on with us, and healing, it requires some sophistication. And that's why it's important to bring in the divine realm. Yes, you can use your own energies. We're all healers. We all have divine power to some extent because we're an extension of Creator. It's not blasphemy. Many people have recognized the truth of that. And even in the religions, they all comment on how God is within us in one way or another. And that's what that means. We're literally extensions. But we're down here now, and we're in a physical form, a physical expression that's more limited than when we're a light being. And we can't do the same things we can do as light beings. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. And this is what Creator will tell you if you ask. We cannot do the same miraculous things we can do as light beings. But we can still ask the light to partner with us to bring those things about. And so if we just move back to that realization that God's there for us, we can enlist its help and things will happen and happen better and happen quicker. And right now, we need divine help more than ever because there's a lot of dark stuff going on and it's ramping up. They're pushing back against the shift in consciousness. So the more people who drift away, who get sort of herded into little clusters, doing just meditation with no particular purpose for it, or focusing on personal enlightenment, but not healing and not healing of the world, they're missing an opportunity to weigh in. So I'm here to tell you that you do have power and you do have a reach and your vote counts. So there's a lot of talk these days about elections and voting and so on. You have a vote every day, whether you're going to line up with the divine realm or not. If you elect to not go to the polls, someone else may get into power you don't want. It's that simple. So it's not a bad analogy. we can ask each and every day to have the divine realm assist us. In whatever way you might be comfortable, reach out to the highest source of divine power. Divine power. There's a lot of sources of power out there. Don't make it vague. Don't think you're too smart to go back and, believe in God again. That's what it is, whatever you want to call it. True source is God. And if you don't think of it in terms of that ultimate divine level, you might fall short, and you might be one of the ones who's being misled into accepting a lesser potential, a lesser reality. Thinking you're powerful disempowers you if you give up the divine. It just does. So that is available, and that's what I'm told we all need to be doing right now. More people voting, more people weighing it and joining together. And you can do it in your own mind. You don't have to go and sign up. You don't have to go to a street corner or a building, join an organization. You don't have to tithe. You just ask in your mind, with your heart, on board. Highest divine power, whatever you are, whatever you'd like to be called, come and help me focus on love and bring it every day, giving and receiving to myself and all around me. That's it. It's about love, but it's first and foremost about divine love. Add divine love to your own. You'll do much more, and you'll be a miracle worker, whether you realize it or not. That love has power, and it can go out and touch others. You might not ever see all the consequences. And I'm just learning now about some of the reach of my own personal work, because Creator has pointed out a couple things, and then I started asking a little around the edges about it. I see effects as people give me feedback when I do some work for them, but they themselves don't always know, because you wouldn't think that having a single healing session done remotely might add 10 years onto your lifespan, but it might. And when that happens, you'll think that's just your life. You got lucky, or you didn't get unlucky. And you won't ever dream that that session you did decades before by that weird guy who dealt with spirit problems and karma had something to do with your longevity. But this is what can happen. And I'm not the only person who can do this. Anyone can do this. It's partnering with the divine. That's what we're talking about. So this is what I live for and dedicate myself to now, because it's sorely needed. There's so much suffering going on, so many difficulties, and the divine realm is there. And the biggest thing to get over is thinking God's going to do it. We're so used to expecting a savior. We're not going to have a savior. This is what I'm told. It's going to be us and God, if we ask for God's help. If we don't ask, God will just let things continue to go their own way, and it's uncertain what might happen. We've got some serious opposition going on, and things could go downhill again. So now is the time to become aware and deal with whatever this does in terms of stirring up worries and fears. Well, there's plenty to worry and fear already if you look around. And I know a lot of people have stopped watching the news because it drags you down. And I get that. And it doesn't help you to be mired in that. And so I don't disagree with that. But there are important reasons why all those things are happening. And that needs your attention, if only to request it to change with the addition of partnering with Creator and inviting Creator to come in and help you make your life better and those around you to make their life better. You have the power to do that. And that is your opportunity. It's what I do. And when I work on behalf of people and ask Creator to come and work on their karma, I might do a session very symbolically and not get into their past life doings and all that. I do that for research. It's not necessary to have it healed because the divine realm knows they can take care of what's needed. So I'll work on people and not look back. Well, I asked a question recently. This will be instructive, that we had a terrible accident here in the area where I live with a young woman who was pregnant with 3 young children driving to Bible camp, and they got hit by another vehicle. They were all killed. The other drivers survived. And so I asked Creator the following question. Was there a karmic purpose for this happening? Because this is the kind of thing that can destroy people's faith or really make them question. You know, how can there be a God? You know, and here are these young folks, even the mom, young woman, and she's pregnant. She's got a new life in her, and it's all snuffed out. Where's God when this sort of thing happens? You know, it's a common response. And there's so much suffering, and the same kind of question applies. This is just a dramatic illustration. You know, innocent lives. They've never hurt anybody. And so I was told by Creator, this was all karmic. Each and every one of those persons had had a past life where they died young. So this was a karmic setup to have that pattern repeat. Okay, here's karma. This is the reach of karma, good or bad. Your good things do come back as blessings and rewards, but bad things come back too, until you heal it, until you fix it. And then Creator did a blessing for me and went on to say, if you had done one of your routine family group protocol sessions with my Lightworker healing protocol for that family, they would all be living because that karma would have been repaired. It was repairable and available to be repaired, but no one knew. It would have changed their destiny. So, of course, I didn't know that when I was doing the session because I don't do an exhaustive, I mean, people have so much stuff and you never know what's the most important thing except what they might show you. And that particular type of issue was not shown to me. So it would have been well, I didn't work on that family, but if you don't know it's there, the divine realm might take your healing request and extend it enough to get extra benefits for the person. So all of my requests are open-ended and broad, except that I can see there's a lot of negativity. I can see a lot that's rumbling. If I want to probe it in detail, I can, but it's not necessary, I am told, to get healing done by divine realm. You don't have to be the authority on the subject. They can do it much better than you can anyway. They don't need you to do an exhaustive analysis first. So the requirements to invoke healing for someone are not huge. The biggest problem is mostly your belief in it. All right, so I did a couple more recently, having asked that question about that family. And I worked on this couple, and this is a woman who called me, and she had some issues, and she was concerned because she and her fiance had some things going on, and they were scheduled to be married, and so she wanted me to kind of do the two of them and kind of scrub things up and take away any negativity, etc. And so I did the session for them, and I was looking for material because I'm putting a book together about my healing protocol. So some clients, I'll look at their past life contracts and look at the point of origination as a learning exercise, because then I can use that as teaching material. So this particular woman had 3 past life contracts, and each time in each life, she was married to someone who died young. It was, going off to war, it was an accident, it was an illness. There was always a circumstance, and she was left on her own, often with a bunch of kids in tow, in very dark times, and it was really a horrendous life then. She didn't have a helpmate, source of income, and suffered greatly. In addition to which, I was shown that the husband was the same in each of those past lives, and it happened to also be the current fiancé. So she's engaged now to this guy she's had 3 past lives with, who died young on her and left her in the lurch. This is a karmic pattern. So, of course, my protocol asks for the healing of all the contracts and for their karmic energies to be healed and to have them dissolved. All right. So I didn't think too much about it. And one day I was going to do some channeling with Creator, and I happened to think about that client. And I kind of put 2 and 2 together in my head. I remembered that thing with the family where they all had died young in past lives. And then I had this more recent client where she'd had the husband that died young and was about to marry him again. So I asked Creator, will my protocol work on the 2 of them to fix their past life stuff? Change things now? Would this have been a problem in the current life had this not been done? And did it contribute? And I was told, yes. We can tell you with 100% certainty, if you had not been called by this woman and done your protocol session for her and her fiance, he would have died young yet again. But the fact you did your protocol session and healed that karma means they will have a long, happy life together. And this will now end this pattern, and it will not occur in the future either. This is the power of healing and why it's important. We all have stuff like this, and it needs attention. So the more you know, the more you're aware, the more you're able to think about availing yourself of divine resources, the more you can do for yourself and your loved ones. It's that simple.
Yes, and at last I have to interrupt you, but hey, you did a great job, and all those my listeners who say I filibuster my guests too much won't be saying that with this interview.
Okay.
But anyhow, I do have some things that need to be addressed, I feel, and I think it's now is a good time to do that. So
Sure.
you gave me some things to jot down my little notepad here by my side to ask questions about. First of all, um, about healing karma and doing little things for karma. One thing I've really fallen in love with doing is picking up litter. And I got a feeling that if I just keep doing that little by little, over and over, keep picking up litter on the street, I'm just going to keep resolving karma bit by bit, little by little, and sooner or later it's going to add up to something really, really rewarding, and I think it actually has in a few instances. And also, when it comes to bad things happening to me, like all of a sudden something really unpleasant happens to me, and I'm thinking, so how's the best way to handle this? I mean, I shouldn't get all worked up about it. I got to move on and all, but I think, okay, perhaps the best thing to do in a situation like this, ask my angels and guides to make sure that this unpleasant thing happening to me, I'd like to make this an opportunity for karma, for bad things I did to get resolved exponentially. Like, well, maybe the bad thing happening to me did resolve karma, but I'm thinking the fact that I'm asking my angels, guides, and source to allow for the karma to resolve even more I'm like seizing the moment, seizing the day, trying to make the most of the opportunity, in this case a bad thing happening to me, to make sure that the maximum amount of karma that would be resolved had I otherwise not asked them for it. So
Beautiful.
little things like picking up litter and asking angels and guides to make sure more karma would get resolved than it would had you not asked them are those good ideas in life for people.
Well, here's another thought. Invite the divine realm to participate in everything you do and to amplify your good works and to use your desire for betterment to extend it as far as it can reach with divine help. You see, so picking up litter, there's all kinds of litter, isn't there? There is the negative comments, the snide remarks people make to one another, all the anger whirling around in social media. That's a kind of litter. People, take pot shots and they just leave that dark stain there for others to stumble on and be dragged down by. It's not so different than someone's sandwich wrappings or a half finished beer bottle or something. It's all litter. It's all negativity. So the divine realm could take that impulse to clean the place up, to do more kinds of cleaning even. So you're a good person and you're wanting the world to be better. And the divine realm can piggyback on your intention and add things to it you might not even know are possible, or that are in need of readjustment. There might be some negativity in a location, and maybe there's litter there because it's a kind of a dark place energetically. Well, maybe the divine can come in and clean the energy as well as, patting you on the back for picking up the stuff. So, I mean, just as an example. And the same with your moment of difficulty or whatever you're struggling with, to ask for as much of the things connected to that discord to be healed as possible, to get at all the underpinnings, all the implications, all the interconnections. It's a beautiful way to amplify the benefit to you because you're empowering the divine realm to use the broadest possible reach with the biggest possible tools. And that's what really can get results. Do you want the quick fix? Do you want the Band-Aid? Or do you want the cure? That's really kind of what you're deciding when you're more casual or cavalier or just kind of quickly trying to deal with something and then maybe more ignoring it than actually thinking about what might be appropriate to do as a response. So good for you.
Thank you very much. And when it comes to clearing places, have I got a story to tell you? Have to do a little bit of a filibuster here, but I've said this in some of my previous shows, and I'll probably say it a lot, but this is a crazy story, and there's some lessons to learn from this from both ends of the spectrum. Here's what happened. I found out about this place in Philadelphia, in the city area, um, called Howl. I'm just going to leave it at that, where it's a place for people to gather to do metaphysical things. There's like a lot of crystals, a lot of gemstones, a lot of like posters of gurus and all that at that place, I hear, based on pictures I've seen of the place and all. And I figured, okay, since I'm probably going to go to this place regularly, I think I better call for a little assistance to make sure I and everybody else who goes there make the most of this. So I contacted my friend Daniel Teague. Maybe you've heard of him from Vago Star Healings. He does a lot of the things you do to a great extent. And I asked him to scan the place, the House Center, for negative energies. He did, and he found 110 negative energies, which is kind of like warning level danger zone, especially for a metaphysical place like that where people do a lot of
I'm
spiritual metaphysical stuff. He said, yeah, definitely a good idea to clear it. If you're planning to go there, yeah, I'll clear it for you. And he gave me the price for it. Gave me actually a little bit of a discount. I credit him for that. Don't assume we'll give it to everybody, but he did, and I paid the price, about $150 to clear all the negative energies out of there. And so after that happened, I contacted the person who ran the place, a woman named Dominique. That night, there was supposed to be an event where people can gather to talk to their deceased loved ones, and my plan was hopefully to go there and hopefully talk with my paternal grandparents and also a friend named Mary, who I knew who died of heroin overdose, who I had a psychic channel in a session a couple years ago. And well, after I contacted Dominique and told her what I did, paying my friend Daniel T to clear the negative energies out of the place. I said, I hope this makes you happy. You should find that your events are going to be a lot more smoother and a lot more joyous from now on. And hey, if it's not too much trouble, do you think maybe you could compensate me? Maybe a few times I come down, you can let me come free of charge. I mean, if I have to pay the fee that you're gonna charge me, like the $10 fee for each session, I will pay it. I did make clear that I will pay it. But hey, I think maybe it's not too much to ask, and maybe you compensate or reward me for a little bit for doing such a spiritual love-based thing, taking money in my pocket and all. Well, I was blindsided and backstabbed. The response I got was from Dominique. She said, I have consulted with counsel, and we have decided that your actions violate the doctrine of we are all one, we are all love, we are all light. So this was not something that we approve of you doing. You are banned from ever coming here. Have a nice day. After hearing that, I got on the phone when the place opened that day. And I called Dominique and I said, okay, listen, lady, what kind of a spiritual love and light-based center bans someone for taking money out of their pocket to clear all the negative energies out of there? Well, she started stuttering and giving me the same excuse she did the first time. And I said, well, that's really effed up. So why don't you apologize? Why don't you rescind my ban? And she hung up on me. And, well, I then asked Daniel Teague to scan her to see if I could find out why she would do something that seems so flat out stupid on the face of it to me. And I found, and this wasn't so shocking, but Daniel Teague, what he found was all 7 of Dominique's chakras are energetically blocked because she has a parasitic entity that's hijacked her aura, and this entity has the ability to court other people. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, I don't think I'm going to go down to hell now, and I don't think a lot of other people should, because they're probably going to be in danger of being courted whenever she holds events down there. Yeah, it's a good thing I put a big monkey wrench in the bad entity's agenda by giving Daniel Teague the money to clear the negative energies, but still, it's not safe to go there because she's courted. Now, this whole thing about me giving money to clear other places, well, it does raise a few questions, and I'm going to take this opportunity to ask these questions now. One, does someone need permission to do these things? Because some people that I've told this story to said, well, don't you think you should have asked for permission? Well, I don't think so, because Daniel T, he can clear places and also balance out people's chakras, and he does it in secret. Like, say, if you know someone who you want to clear their property or balance their chakras, pay me and I'll clear it for them, and you don't have to tell them, and I don't need permission to ask them. I don't know if he needs permission from higher self. Some people said, well, he's got to get permission from higher self, and he would know if higher self doesn't want him to do the clearing then. But I don't think that's ever been a problem with him. So I don't think you really need permission. And also this habit that I seem to have of trying to clear out, because this isn't the first time I've done this. I've done this for many loved ones, balancing their chakras and clearing places. And I'm taking money out of my own pocket to do it, to pay Daniel Teague. And he has every right to charge a fee because this is the only job he's got. Is that a healthy habit? And do you think maybe what can I do to make sure, or when would I know, or anybody else that does this know, okay, you don't have to obsess about this. Don't let it become a habit or an addiction to think, okay, you have to keep paying to clear negative energy out of places that you feel the need to clear out of. How do I know when I can like sit back and say, okay, maybe don't worry about it too much? So, and also, would it be in the best interest, do you think, for me to ask Daniel or maybe someone like you to invade this Dominique woman's privacy and clear this entity out of her aura, because she's doing more harm than good by holding the sessions, I think?
Well, all right. So this is what I've been told by the divine realm about the ethics of remote work. If there's dark spirits involved or extraterrestrial involvement, it's fair game. Anyone can go and remove themselves or ask the divine realm to remove such predators, because they are interlopers and they're not asked to be there by and large. If there's a karmic involvement, your energy won't do it, nor will the divine step in. If there's an agreement for the entity to be present, the divine realm will not step in. You can call Archangel Michael, it doesn't matter, get God to come. They will not touch it because it's a human choice. The human has to make a request to override that free will choice. So there is a workaround, but by and large, to take away that kind of negativity you're talking about, it's possible and ethical to just ask for it to be done, or to use your own energy to remove the things that are there. Now, it is possible to interfere with things you don't really have provenance, you don't really have authority to do. So it is a little bit of a slippery slope. So here's what sets my work apart from what most people do. I do everything through Creator. So I let Creator make the call. I'll request, I'll go and see the darkness, and then I'll ask Creator to remove it. And I know basically how to do that, what needs to be done, the different kinds of spirits, and what their individual requirements might be. But then I leave it up to Creator always. And so I had that little extra buffer there of ethical consideration. So I'm not going to get into trouble sending my energy into anyone or any place, because I don't do that other than to look intuitively, which is very gentle. And it won't harm a person to take a quick intuitive look. So if you go in with your own energy, you're on your own. Most of the time you'll be okay when you're removing darkness like this. But if it's a karmic issue going on with the person and their energy is out of alignment, and you go in and start messing with that, you can be a bull in a china shop. And I've seen that before. I've had people come to me who were very leery of healers because they went to a big name healer, world famous healer. I won't use a name. And this has happened more than once, and they got worse. And when I was told about it, because I asked the light, what went wrong? What happened? And I was told that healer, that big name healer, didn't know that they didn't effectively fully heal some karmic issues. And what it did was to stir it up. And they didn't remove any spirits from the person because they don't do that. Amazing to me to hear that, but because it's such a common problem. The spirits saw the karmic discord and then started to hammer and ramped it up big time. So here's an example of a healer, well-meaning, wanting to help, did a partial healing, and it made things worse. So there's a potential for doing that. So you have to be careful. And so here's how the healing works when you go to God. Creator won't just do it. Creator will go to the higher self of the target person and ask permission. So that's the authority we have to run our world. Even God won't come in and heal us. Even if you pray for healing, Creator will come to your higher self and be sure it's okay with the higher self, because that's the part that knows more about you and is your trusted guardian. So the higher self has huge authority. So if you're adept enough to get a read from the higher self about what you're doing, then you are on safe ground. So if you can figure that out intuitively, in a way that you trust, you'll be able to do lots of things on someone's behalf, because you can trust the higher self to be the gatekeeper. You can't always trust the person, as you well know. Some people are oppositional. They're maybe really corrupt. They're faulty at the moment. They're not of right mind even. Or maybe you're talking about children when they don't even know about these concepts. And a lot of people will refuse help for any number of reasons, sometimes because they're out of alignment and they're not a reliable agent to ask for permission from. That's why it's good to go through Divine Realm, because they understand that and they won't let that troubled part of the mind be the deciding factor. Does that help you?
Yes, I think you've answered it pretty well. And I do have some other things in mind in regards to places to clear and people I want to heal. But then again, now that you've just told me, you could probably try to do it yourself. I mean, I have no doubt people can have the ability to do it themselves. To heal and clear. It's just that Daniel Teague, ever since he had that car accident where he discovered this power, he's one of many people in this world that surprisingly have discovered they have a power that they never knew they had after having some sort of a freak accident, in which case he can clear places and heal things, and he can actually do it in a way that no regular down to earth healer with higher level consciousness powers can. I mean, you basically can't go wrong with him. But when you try to do it yourself, you got if you're not absolutely perfect, and nobody is perfect, then don't expect to be able to heal the energies entirely and permanently be able to clear. You even made that clear earlier during your little filibuster earlier when you said we don't have the same power that higher level spiritual people do. It's just that Daniel, he's an exception to that when he specifically does his healings and clears in those things. He is, for all intents and purposes, becoming one of those higher level beings, and to some extent you are too when you do the kind of things you do as a soul whisperer, that trademark term I use to describe you, which yeah, that is a trademark term actually. I see the TM on the website on your Team Angel page. So yes, a lot of things to learn in regards to that. Also, you talk about curses and beliefs. Now, this is something I got to ask you about, because another metaphysical and spiritual place I was at yesterday, the Being One Center in Warminster, going to make a lot of trips there. I also had Daniel T. clear the energies out of there, and everybody seemed to praise me for that, unlike the lady at the health center. But anyway, when I went up there, I had some people do I was laying on a table, had some people do a scan of me to find things, and one of the people who did that said, you seem to struggle from a belief. I don't know if fear is the right way to describe it, but a belief, or maybe a fear, that you cannot be the best you can be because you think other people can have power over you in certain regards. And I said, well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because this is very something I've wrestled with to a great extent, discussing on my show, and also specifically with the area of sun gazing, because some people have asserted that you shouldn't sun gaze during like midday, only during the first hour of sunrise and the last hour of sunset, because that's when the UV index is zero. However, Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis, who's arguably my number one source of information on my show, because I feel his ability to read the Akashic Records is probably the best way to get a definitive answer to any question out there. He said that sun gazing is safe no matter what time of the day you do it. The energy will just bypass the physical and go right to the brain to heal and neutralize everything in your body for the better. And however, some people would definitely beg to differ with that. Samuel Kilwaz, who I had on my show, said he knows someone who burned his retinas trying to do that. And anyone who's seen the documentary Eat the Sun with that guru HRM, well, he was caught eating in that documentary, but that's kind of beside the point. Also, his protege in that episode, he also suffered the ophthalmologist he saw did discover damage to his eyes that would be conducive with what an ophthalmologist would tell you is what you'd expect from looking at the sun. And so I contend, okay, if Andrew Bartzis is telling the truth when he says looking at the sun is harmless, what did he fail to take into account? How are these people getting damaged? Well, I've always thought and suggested that it's because of a collective consciousness placebo effect, whereby a great many people in the world believe that looking at the sun is harmful, and beliefs manifest into reality. So even if you believe that you are safe looking at the sun and it won't hurt you, if you're surrounded by a whole slew of people who are telling you, you better stop doing that or you're going to get hurt, and people that are worrying about you nonstop and thinking, oh my God, this person's going to get hurt if he keeps looking at the sun, well, then you can expect to see damage caused to your eyes, or what can be construed as damage, because all those people are causing a collective consciousness placebo effect on you that causes damage. It's just like a mother who gives her children the flu every winter because she stresses out about her kids getting the flu when winter's coming. And this is a woman who was at a conference I saw was talking about. She said, I worried about my kids getting the flu every winter, and they always got it. But then when I learned about the law of attraction, I realized, okay, maybe if I stop worrying about them getting the flu and instead envision them being healthy, they won't be getting the flu anymore. Well, she started doing that, and lo and behold, they stopped getting the flu, and they were healthy in the winter. So I'm thinking, okay, does this suggest that you don't necessarily have power to stop what other people are doing? I mean, anybody who studied the art of voodoo would say, no, you don't. If a very powerful witch doctor wanted to do voodoo on you with a doll, or even without a doll, they could do it. And if a lot of people with evil intentions were meditating together to try to inflict pain on you, then yeah, you're going to feel the pain even if you try to resist it, because energy flows where attention goes. You got like 1,000 people versus one person. They're going to be able to affect you even if you believe you have the power to stop them. Well, this person at the Being One Center was telling me, no, you got to stop thinking like that, Andrew. You have to think, okay, you have the ability to not let people overpower you. As long as you believe you are powerful, you are one, then you have the ability to not suffer from voodoo and not suffer from curses and all these things. But like I said, that kind of goes against what I've been taught about energy flowing where attention is going and beliefs manifesting and that. So how can I make sense of this, and what am I failing to account, which has caused me to believe the wrong thing here all along?
Well, I don't think you're off track, but there's a question of degree, there's a question of specifics in all these different examples. And we are in a physical realm, and we do have to give that its due. We're not in a metaphysical realm, meaning a supernatural realm, something beyond the physics of the physical manifestation we're a part of. It is real, and there is a little bit of a risk in kind of running away with oneself when you think of things in terms of everything being energy, and then consciousness being really the ultimate energy. And so that is all true. But right here, right now, there is matter, which is consciousness, energy, that is in a kind of a condensed form. And it's more than likely that if you don't open the door, you will run into it and there'll be a bang. So you can train your thought on moving through that door and see how it goes. But we're all still waiting for a convincing levitation video that isn't faked. So there are things that are easy, there are things that are hard, and there are things that are possible but unlikely. So this is what you're kind of flirting with, the things that are possible but less likely. It's just like, most people believe if you stick your hand over the flame on a stove, your hand will be cooked. And you could perhaps override that with your consciousness, but I wouldn't propose doing that exercise because there's an element of risk, and it is an exercise after all. It's not a matter of life and death. So if you want to test the limits, you can certainly do that. And mind over matter can work. There's no question about it. But most people right here, right now, in the physical, have some limitations on how they can entrain their consciousness and use it to manipulate matter and energy. Most of the consequences of thought are subtle. So it's more an influence in subtle ways, in subtle realms, than in the physical per se. So there's nothing wrong in principle with what you're saying, but the execution is always the rub. It's no different in enlisting the divine realm through prayer. If you don't do it right, it won't work. So you can't just think of something and make it be so without doing a little bit of development of the inner muscles that you need, the inner workings to bring that about. So I would not particularly advocate people go and do sun gazing for that reason. You know, even if 1 out of 100 runs into trouble, I would not want that as a karmic consequence of my making that bold pronouncement that it's safe. And all you need to do is tune into that positive view that the spiritual group that you belong to has, and you'll be fine. There will be a karmic consequence if your suggestions lead someone into getting into trouble because they can't muster up the same purity of thought that you might have. So I always am a little cautious about such things because the whys and wherefores do come into play. You know, gravity is gravity, and you can stop something from falling in midair potentially with your thought. But if there's a baby underneath a falling ceiling, I would try to jump and cover that baby with my body before I would try to levitate it out of the way. That's me. So I don't mean to fight with you about it, but I think there are practicalities of energy, and that's the purpose of it. You see, we were not put into a world with free form energy to manipulate however we wish. That's what light being life is like. So when we were created to come down in the physical, we were created to be in a realm with constraints because of the density. It's already preformed to be dense and to have limits. So we bump into things. We want something to be different, but it doesn't change with our thought. It all depends. There are people who can make things happen, people who can move objects of physical matter and so on. But most have a high degree of limitation, and that's deliberate. And the reason is this is a training ground. So it's like we're in kindergarten. We come in with our knowledge and awareness wiped clean for the most part, unless we can use some intuitive reach to reacquire awareness of higher things in the past, the Akashic records, and so on. And the purpose is to confront the negativity that's here and to learn from it and to grow beyond it. We have participated in the past over the years in allowing that to creep in. And so now there's a karmic debt we have to overcome it. That is a test of us, and it's a training ground. And for the meantime, we're lacking certain skills and a certain amount of reach for safety reasons, because we're not really light being ready with the human corruption of experience of negativity that's been imposed on us. We would probably make pretty poor divine God level beings right now because we've got too much an amount of warpage, too many selfish thoughts, too many ego needs, too many tendencies to judge others and to maybe be harsh and punitive in how we react to things. That's from that long karmic history. We got to undo a lot of that. And so that constraint on our reach and our ability to manipulate energy is purposeful. We weren't intended to be infinite in reach. We were intended to be more light beings than we are now. And that's the fault of the interlopers who dimmed us and dumbed us down. So we should be able to do more than we can now. But there are still physical attributes that are physical and for a reason, and we do have to reckon with that. We can move beyond it to varying degrees, but it is a tall order for many people. So if that's something that draws you and intrigues you, you have my blessing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a good exercise because we can all do more than we think. And so those working on those things can be productive and can help to raise us up. But the magical end result will be a tough thing for the majority. And for right now, that's how I see it. And that's really what I'm told, that we don't have that infinite reach of creator when we're down here. So we're going to fall short on a lot of things we might want to have happen. And that is our current reality. It's not the ultimate reality, but we're on a short leash right now through the physical principles of 3D. We're going to transcend that, but it requires a lot of healing alongside the growth in our understanding of consciousness and thought and how to employ it.
Yes, no doubt it does. And I want to ask you certain ways about how to employ that healing and clearing and such. Do you pay a lot of attention to trying to do your like healings and clearings and readings and all the stuff you do? Do you think that doing it on astrologically and numerologically significant times is important? I mean, right now we're actually we started this interview at the same time that the full moon just rose. We're having a full moon tonight. It's a super moon, by the way. The totality is like around 1:30 in the morning, but the moon rise above the horizon was about the same time we started this interview. And some people would say that during events like this, or not just moon events, but also you want to do your rituals and your meditations and such during events like moonrise, moonset, sunrise, sunset, solar noon, and also during the alignments, the key points of those alignments, solstices, equinoxes, and certain conjunctions and whatnot with the stars. And some might say, well, that's trying to ritualize the whole thing, and that's taking away from the fact that, okay, you're using that as a bit of a crutch and all, you don't really need to do that. But some say, no, that's not a crutch, that's using it as a tool, using the alignment as a tool to enhance your the things that you're doing. I mean, the Illuminati, they're obsessed about doing things during astronomically and astrologically and numerologically significant times. We, on the other hand, can do the opposite end of the spectrum and use it for good purposes. I think, and I'm planning to put all my crystals outside tonight to energize them in the full moon. The clouds outside, hopefully they'll clear. But I mean, some people who hear all that stuff about the moon being artificial and being under the construct, under the control of malevolent entities, would ask the question, well, how can the like the moon energized crystals when it's being controlled by bad guys? Well, I explained to them, no. It doesn't work like that. The crystals are being energized by this strictly benevolent qualities of the moon and all that. It's not they're not being harmed in any negative way. So I'm battling out digressing too much here, but a question for you is: do you think astrologically, numerologically significant times are key when doing the things that you do, and how can you make sure, like in the case of a moon clearing and such for crystals and such, you can make sure that you are going to make sure you get the good energies out of the alignment, and no bad energies are gonna be affecting the thing.
Well, again, I would do it through divine realm. So they can always add something to the party. And the virtue of that is it can make up for sins in a sense, just as a figure of speech. In other words, if there is a non-optimal current reality of astrological influences, the divine realm can still bring in energy because it is so vast in its reach. So you can compensate for non-optimal conditions by enlisting their help. So I like it as an add-on, and I see a place for it with many, many people in doing many, many things, not only healing, but other spiritual practice and meditative work and just improving the flow of energy and the flow of life and on and on and on. And so there's no right and wrong that's absolute here. And I would view using astrological conjunctions and so on, which I do believe have an influence, and they are useful to understand. I don't pay a lot of attention and scrutiny to it because I want to supersede it. So I don't want it in my consciousness as a potential limitation. And there is that aspect. If you think your life is going to fall apart when Mercury is in retrograde, I think it's probably more likely it'll happen as much because you think it will as the astrological influence. That's my personal 2 cents, but I think there's a grain of truth in it. And by the same token, I see advantage in ritual, that it's not just a crutch. It is a tool. It is a way to align your intention and align your belief in the likelihood of what you're wanting to see happen. So if you think it's more likely with a certain astrological sign to be in the current heavens, then that will increase the likelihood, the probability that you will bring that about through your desire, the consciousness that you're putting into whatever you want to see happen. So I see that all as working together. It's the power of consciousness. And when you join together with multiple people, that will amplify things as well. And this is time honored. I mean, all the spiritual cultures down through the ages have known about group work and group intention and group effort as being useful and important. So this is another way of enlisting the heavens as a partner in what you do, because everything has consciousness. All matter is consciousness. And so bodies of matter, aggregates of matter, have a particular consciousness associated, and it all has influence, and you can enlist it. And this is what you do when you work with crystals. You're asking for some kind of alignment and cooperation with the energy of the crystal to help to complement an intention you're holding. And crystals can be extremely helpful for doing many, many things. And you can confer with them, you can talk with them, you can enlist their help, you can use them to repurpose their intelligence, their awareness, and their energies for all sorts of things, for communication, for healing work. So the universe has many, many potentials that are just barely being tapped at the current time. So you can use all of these as an adjunct, and I think they all have value. And as like many things, the person who is drawn to them will often turn out to be the most adept in using those avenues. And it may well be because of prior affinity gained through past life experience doing those very things back in the day. And so they have accrued an inner awareness and inner knowing and inner expertise in being in harmony with the heavens and understanding the rhythms of solar system consciousness. And that can be very powerful, especially with someone who is in tune with them and senses them and can work with them in a purposeful way. So there's many potentials and there are many tools. And sometimes the tool that best fits the hand will win the race. It'll be the one most effective, because it's not just maybe the one you believe in the most, but also there's a deeper reason as well. And belief might be a big part of it too. So if you love your crystal work, you'll be good at it, and it'll do things for you. This is the same with astrology.
Right. And just, we got about um, 8 minutes to go left before we'll call night. That's the full 2 hours when it will be. But all right, maybe time for one or two more questions. I want to talk about spirits and ghosts for a moment. I believe I've actually seen at least one ghost in my life. Don't mean to gross anybody out when I say this, but the incident where I saw a ghost was I was in the woods, in nature, and I realized, okay, there's no bathroom here, but I got nature calls. What am I going to do? So I got like a bear taking shit in the woods. Yeah. So I did that, and I dropped my pants. I was like, okay, let's hope nobody's walking on the nature trails here. And so after relieving myself, I looked to my left, and I saw a person. I was like, where did this guy come from? And walking up to where the opening of the woods is on the road that's out there, and I was like, okay, that was kind of freaky. So after finishing my little thing in the woods, I went out there and I looked around the exit where the guy had walked out, and there was no one there. And it's interesting how people in this area have talked about seeing strange phenomenon and such. Also, there's a site not too far from my house in 1921 where two trains collided because the conductor goofed on switching the rails, and the people say they hear spirits there, the people that died in the train wreck. And I've walked by there. I haven't heard or felt any spirits, but I have heard a train whistle sound when I've gone through there. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's the spirit of the train that's there. Now, what my question for you is, what exactly needs to happen for one to be able to see a ghost. I mean, why me? Why was I chosen to be able to see this ghost out of all the times in the world when I was relieving myself in the woods and hoping nobody was around to see me because I didn't want to gross any. I don't care if anybody saw me. I just didn't want to gross anybody out. But yeah, and so and other people too in this area have said that they've seen ghosts. That the ghosts that they claim they see, like the ghost I thought I saw, they were not in any way translucent or partially transparent like a lot of ghosts that you see are it was mistaken for a true genuine human being where the skin looked like genuine human skin and the clothes that they were wearing seemed like genuine clothes and all. So that's easy to believe. Well, is that truly a ghost or is it some kind of other entity? So what are some entities that you can think of? Why do they exist? What are they made of? Like Casper the Friendly Ghost once said when he was asked, "What are you made of?" He said, "I think I'm made of that tingly feeling that you feel when your foot falls asleep." But no, I don't think that's true. So what are they made of? And this whole thing about them in a different frequency in another dimension, and that when you see them, that's just interference. Well, I don't know if that's true with all spirits. So I'm asking too many questions at once here, but you're the expert on this. Can you help make sense of these ghost spirits, why they exist, what they are, and where they come from, and all the rest of it?
Yeah, well, I could talk for hours about this, but we don't have that, so you're safe. Here's the quick answer to what you're trying to get at, I think. First of all, what you see as ghosts are almost all human spirits. 94% of ghosts are human lost souls. They're wayward spirits that are earthbound, and they're wandering about. They're often confused. Some don't know they're dead, and they don't know what to do. Sometimes they're afraid to go to the light. More often, they're just lost. So they may show up. They may not be visible. They may be partly visible. It's a function of an energetic manifestation. They may be able to make themselves visible when they know someone is present as a way to try to get your attention. And it might be just the resonance that they feel with your energy that brings them closer to a physical manifestation or expression. So they become visible, and it's in response to you being there, and without them maybe even realizing that that's happening. But if they see you coming, they may run, and so then they'll disappear again. So it's probably something like that you witnessed, and it may well have been a former person involved in that accident. People will stay in a certain area. They may not know how to navigate and leave. They may not have the thought of where to go. It's hard to picture what it's like. But when you die, you lose your body, you lose your eyes, your ears, your tactile senses, and you're in a nothingness. You have to relearn how to develop your light being sensory apparatus. And it's not automatic that will happen instantly. It may take a while, and it might not happen. It might happen for years or even decades or centuries. I found people out there hundreds of years after they died. 1 out of 3 people who die do not make it to the light. This is a huge problem. I do tons of spirit rescue work for people's loved ones. I'll check for free if they're in the light, and I will do it if they promise to pay me to rescue them, because I don't want to have a huge burden that takes all my time, because I have to help those people. It's terrible. They're often in torment. They're often besieged by dark spirits, and that's a whole other story. So these people need rescuing. They're not typically dangerous, although they can be angry. And so I've seen spirits like this that will tamper with a house and sabotage appliances because they're mad at the people that are living there and they think it's their home still. Those things can and do happen. Most of those spirits are harmless, but they can also lead to problems if they attach to you. That's the biggest risk. More people are haunted than houses. And when a wayward spirit attaches and it's confused, it's lost, it's unhappy, and it's thinking about what happened when it last was killing itself or something, you don't want that energy in your body. Or maybe you were mangled in a train wreck like this fellow might have been. you don't want that energy inside you. So these people need rescuing. That's the long and short of it.
Okay, they need rescuing. That's the key thing.
Yeah,
Okay, so
they're in a higher vibration, but they're in between us and the higher astral plane, which is the heavenly realm. They're in the lower astral, and they're closer to us energetically than they are to the light. So they might fade in and out of physical visibility much more readily than an angel would, or an even higher level being in the light itself. You won't see them unless they can produce a physical manifestation for you to see. But they have the capability to do something like that purposefully. The lost ones are just really confused.
well, thank you. This was a very, very enlightening conversation. I'm glad you gave me a lot of stuff for the first hour and 50 minutes or so. That was really interesting and gave me no intention of interrupting you. That was really important. All those people say, like I said, filibuster. If I guess too much, won't be saying that with this interview. But since we're coming to an end, I guess I'll give you a couple minutes now. You give out anything you like. Again, your contact info if you want. If you want to do one more sales pitch for your services, by all means do that. And then I'll bid you good night and wish you the best of luck.
Well, you can reach me through teamarchangel.com, and that will get you to me. It has my contact information on it, my phone, my email. I'm very busy, but I love to help people, and this is what I'm all about. There's lots of work to do, and I love to spread the messages about what is needed here, because the spiritual people are not fully doing the healing work that's needed. They're involved too much with other things, in my opinion, and they're important because they're uncorrupted and they're being left on their own to sort of find things to do, and they need to do some serious work as well as the fun stuff. So that's kind of my mission to, see if I can intrigue some people. Not everybody wants to do the things I do. I understand that it's difficult to think about for many, and it's distasteful. But there's nothing like helping someone find their way back. And it's true of the dark spirits even. They need to be healed. They need to be saved. And it's our salvation if we can help them, all these interlopers. That will ultimately heal us. And that's a true karmic healing. If you heal your perpetrator, you will be healed at the same time, because they will not heal karmically until the wrongs done against you are taken care of. And that is the ultimate answer. It's not how we think as humans. We're all about punishment, lock them up, execute them or whatever. And all that does is push them on, and they'll still be doing the same stuff and still causing harm.
Thank you very much, Karl. Like I said, very good interview. I will make sure I upload this to YouTube within the next couple days. I guess I'll send you a link and all when it's up. So if you want to spread it anywhere to promote it, by all means, you'll be able to do that. So I wish you the best of luck in whatever you do on your future endeavors. Good luck on the rest of your trek to infinite consciousness. Have a good night, a good trek.
Good luck to you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.